In these readings today, there's a lot about perception. And we see this beginning in the Old Testament reading with Elijah the prophet. Now, the story before it, which you didn't hear today, is that Elijah has conquered over the prophets of Baal up in Mount Carmel, and thinking that God's going to support him, what actually happens is the queen, Jezebel, gets really angry, threatens to kill him, and so Elijah has to flee for his life. He goes through the country to the south, into the Negev desert area, and he hides in a cave for a while. So what Elijah was expecting was something like what happened on Mount Carmel. That was really spectacular. I don't know if you remember the story. Fire comes down from heaven and burns up the altar, the stones, everything, and they go and kill the prophets of Baal, and they think, now the prophet thinks, the religion of ancient Israel will be restored. And it isn't. What he perceived had happened didn't happen, so he fled. And we have the same kind of concept here in the gospel today. The story just before the one we heard today is that Jesus feeds the 5,000. And I don't know if you remember, at the end of that story, the gospel writers tell you people were so wowed by this that they wanted to what? They wanted to make him king. So they had their perception of what Jesus was supposed to be. Remember, I've told you this before, it's worth repeating. What did they think the Son of Man was going to do? They had that idea rooted in the book of Daniel, but then stuff got developed in popular literature that was never in the Bible, and it embroidered a lot on the role of the Son of Man. So the Son of Man, they thought, was going to lead a revolution against the Roman Empire. The Son of Man was going to pray and the heavens would open, and angels were going to come out of the clouds with swords and other great stuff, and the angels were going to swoop down and help the Israelites slaughter the Romans, drive them out of their holy country, and the Son of Man would then get a son of David, descendant of the king, back on the throne. They would rule from sea to sea. To heck with Rome. That's what the Son of Man was going to do, they thought. And Jesus kept telling them, even at the Transfiguration, the Son of Man must suffer. And they keep saying, no, the Son of Man doesn't suffer. So he tells them over and over again. And the Son of David has a different role to play. Jesus redefines those titles, but they keep not seeing it because they have a perception of what they expect. Elijah went to hide in the cave as a result. But Elijah also had the spiritual insight to recognize when God was present. And I hope you heard in that reading that it was not in the spectacular manifestations of earthquakes and fires and hurricane winds and all that kind of stuff. God wasn't in any of those. It was in the whisper. The whisper. That's where God was. And Elijah recognized it and hid his face because he didn't dare to look on God. But Elijah then will find the strength to go back and do the work again. Because he sees, he understands, he knows God is present in the little whisper. I think, too, you might apply that to the Lord's own death on the cross. Remember, the Lord Jesus died as a criminal, unwanted, in a sense, a kind of whisper. Another public execution, of which there were plenty in the Roman Empire. Nobody thought much about it other than a few people. It was a little whisper. Most people didn't recognize the whisper. And St. Paul is struggling with this in his letter today. It's tearing him up that his own people, the Jewish people, don't recognize God present in Jesus. And they still don't. Because they have expectations of how God would be present. And God just better fulfill those expectations. And God doesn't do it. Elijah caught it in the little thing, the whisper. How many people caught it in the birth of Christ, a little baby? Not too many. A little whisper again. That's where God was present. So St. Paul is pouring out his anguish over this. I wish, I wish, I wish. And I could say the same to you about, let's say, the Muslim world. I don't know if you realize this, but in the Muslim world, their idea of Jesus was as a great prophet. I think you know that. But they also believe he never died on the cross. God just substituted some poor schmuck that looks like it. That's the belief. Because a prophet won't suffer. Really? You see the fear of going into the idea of God and suffering. Oh, well, God doesn't suffer. That tidies that all up. But we as Christians stay there. This is pretty daring in world religion, people, that God knows what it is to suffer in Jesus of Nazareth. That's astonishing. But most of the world says, no, that's not true. I hope you hear the little whisper. It's hard, isn't it? This is kind of heavy stuff, so let me lighten it up for you a little bit. I was talking to a Presbyterian minister, a friend of mine, his name is Bill, and we were talking about this gospel once and perceptions of people. And he said his little daughter once, he and his daughter talked, and his little daughter said to him, well, Daddy, what do you expect from God? So Bill said, well, you know that I preach on Sunday to the people in church. Yeah, I see you do that, Dad. And, I pray about that, and I hope I can help people have a good experience of my sermon, and that people will actually pray together and maybe try to live a stronger Christian life in the week to come. And maybe people will even sing together instead of sitting there being bored. They might put themselves into what we're doing together. And that's what I expect. I expect God will help me. I have to do my part, and God will do God's part. And so his daughter said to him, I'm not lying, well, gee, Daddy, why doesn't God help you with that? So he said, well, that took the wind out of my sails. But you see the expectation, you see what you want to see when you've got an expectation. And the people are having such a hard time getting who Jesus is. Even in the gospel today, it starts with, he made them get into the boat. It's an imperative. Why? Because the story ended with, the people wanted to make him king. And he's thinking, this is going wrong, this is not the right way. You guys, get in the boat. That's what he's telling them. It's not, oh, would you please get out? No. It's an imperative. And he does the same with the crowd. Did you notice the word is dismiss? He says, go away. The crowd doesn't get it. The apostles don't get it. So Jesus needs his prayer time. Off they go, and then we have this incredible manifestation of walking on the water. So I ask you this week, how are your perceptions blinding you from who Christ truly is? What difference can he make in your life over this week? What stormy sea maybe are you walking on? Maybe you don't have one this week, but I know a lot of people do. If you don't have one this week, you'll probably have one next week, right? We know how this goes. Is he the one you really trust in? Do you keep your eyes on him, or do you let your eyes kind of slide off and start sinking? That's the challenge for this week. This is a challenging gospel and a challenging set of readings. I hope you take it to heart and accept the challenge this week.